Up next are thread. Okay, so there are two types of thread that you can find. There's actually multiple types, but really these are the top two that you can use. The embroidery floss, which is this one, is a lot more common in stores like Michael's and Joann's in the US. So if you just want to go to your local crafts shop in the US, you're going to find a lot more variety in colors of the embroidery floss as you would of the size 8 pearl cotton balls. These, for whatever reason, are just not as common in the US. And so if you want to get a very specific color or you want to see a full range of colors, you're going to have to probably order online. There are very few shops that I've seen, at least where I've been, that have a variety of colors. DMC.com sells them online and you can order them. And I think if they have a sale every once in a while, they'll have free shipping, at a certain amount. So if you really are attached to the size 8 pearl cotton thread balls, then you're probably gonna have to order them online if you're based in the US. If you're in other places, you might find them. But the embroidery floss, it's all the same, okay? So it's all the same, it's just a little bit different to work with. They're both from the same brand of DMC. Highly recommend. It's just the top rated brand, highest quality of thread out there. And what's great about DMC is the colors are all categorized, so they've all been standardized, and all of these different numbers indicate the specific color. So if you get size 169 of DMC anywhere in the world, it's going to be the exact same color. So if you're working on a project and you run out of thread, for example, you can always you can seek out the number and you'll know exactly what color it is without having to worry about matching it and making sure it's the same color. Now, the only difference when you're working with them, because you can also interchange. So let's say you have a size, and make sure you get size 8 because that refers to the thickness of the thread. So size 8 is the kind of the thickness that we would use. If you're working with one size 8 ball, let's say you got one and then you ran out and you were just desperate to finish off this project, which I have done that. I have been 100% guilty of. And so I have been like, I don't want to wait for my order to come in from DMC. So I would just use the same number and go to the Michael's and get it as an embroidery floss. You can use them interchangeably. They do feel a little bit different, but ultimately they're kind of the same. So the way that you're going to use them, the balls of thread are really easy because you're literally just going to measure out however much you need and then cut it. But you want it, when you're using the embroidery floss, it comes in strands of 6, and I'll show you in a second. And so you're going to want to cut them and separate them out, which is kind of annoying when you're working on this. But I don't know if you can tell, this is a little bit difficult, but basically these pearl cotton size 8 balls of thread are essentially 2 pieces of thread kind of twisted together. It's kind of hard to tell from here. I think if you work with one, you'll be able to separate them out. So what that means is that because this embroidery floss, it comes in strands of 6, you're going to have to separate them out into 3 parts every time you cut a piece out. So let me go ahead and cut a couple pieces for you so that we can see the difference. The only thing that I want to mention before I go off camera is when you're cutting a piece of thread, a good way to do it is essentially measure out the length from your wrist or from your fingertips to your shoulder. That is kind of a good amount of thread to work with. You can also do shorter if it's easier to work with at the beginning. So I'll just cut, a very small piece that I can use, but you don't want to make it too small. So just, I think this amount is pretty good. I don't know if you can measure that, but it's basically, let's say it's from the tops of my fingers to my elbow. But we'll start off with that. That's just easier to kind of get started with. But then ultimately, as you're practicing, as you're going through, you'll just automatically, I think, pulling it up to your shoulder is a pretty solid sized piece of thread to work with at a time. Now, the reason for that is I learned actually from Wafa of Tatreez and Tea that one of the reasons they did that is because any longer is going to impact the woman that you're sitting next to when you're working. So traditionally, people used to do Tatreez together. And so if they're sitting next to each other, all, stitching together, and then their thread is so long, they're going to be hitting, they're going to be hitting their neighbors left and right as they're kind of pulling the thread through back and forth. The other reason also, just for more practical reasons, for me in particular, this happens to me all the time. If you get a size longer than that, from your wrist to your shoulder, you do something longer than that length, then a lot of knots tend to happen just naturally because the thread is getting caught up in itself as you're threading through the fabric back and forth. So anyways, start with that. I'm going to cut a piece from each of these different balls of thread and a piece from the embroidery floss, and then I'll show you kind of the differences in how to maneuver with the embroidery floss so that it matches the same thickness as the ball of thread. All right, I've got my thread cut. I've done one size of the purple, and hopefully you can see that, and one of the grayish color, which was embroidery floss. So I'm gonna try to come up close. If you can tell, the embroidery floss is a lot thicker than the thread that was from the thread ball, the ball of thread, because like I mentioned, the ball of thread uses 2 strands twirled around each other, and the embroidery floss is actually 6 strands. So what you're going to do, just to make sure that you're using the same level of thickness across all of your embroidery, no matter if you're using the embroidery floss or the balls of thread, you're going to take the embroidery floss and you're just going to literally separate it out into sets of 2 threads. All right, so I'm going to take out 2, and this is also another reason why you can't cut the thread too long, because it'll just be more difficult to separate them out. So this is going to be kind of one section, and then you'll do the other 2. Oops, lost it. And that way you'll have, see, now I've knotted it, which is totally fine. My trick is I just pull it out from the other side, and then it's easily gone. So now, actually, when you cut the embroidery floss, you actually cut 3 sections of thread, and they're all ready to be used. So that's your thread. Next up, I'll go through kind of threading your needle, and then we'll get started. So exciting!